from these points. Why do the Shia have a negative something? Oh, I can't read it. Connotation towards Abu Bakr Siddiq and Aisha when they were the Prophet's close companions. Wouldn't Rasulullah know better than us? Very good question. Excellent question. Having a negative connotation has to have validity. If it is not substantive, in other words, for me to dislike somebody on the opposite side because they happen to follow someone I don't like, there is no authority for such an individual to have such hatred. To have negative connotation here, okay, to exercise this negativity has to be highly conditional. Let me give you an example. We're talking about Abu Bakr, who was the first caliph, meaning he took the caliphate when in fact from the Shia point of view, Ali should have been the successor, right? So now you have a dispute. So let me give you an example of how the very man whose authority God gave was taken from him. What did he say? And how did he behave? And this is really a lesson that we all need to learn. Whether we're Sunni or Shia, we need to learn this lesson from this angle. You find that there was a man from the children of Israel, Bani Israel, who came to him and said, look, your prophet just died and you guys are already disputing about who's the successor. Basically trying to get him excited. And Imam Ali, who is now the authority of God from a divine prescription, he is the authority of God, says to him that we Muslims are united. We believe in one God. We worship, our prayers are intact. Our Quran is intact. Our belief in the oneness of God is intact. Leave us alone. He doesn't go around and say, no, you're right, let's get together and let's fight it out and let's hash it. What does Imam say? That although the caliphate has been taken, our objective as Muslims is to protect the principles of Islam. The difference of opinion, we can talk about it. It is very clear that these were, Abu Bakr was definitely a companion of the Prophet, but Sahaba understand one thing. Within the principles of Islam, and this is something very important for us all to understand, that just because somebody inherits the title Sahaba, it doesn't necessarily make him right or wrong. So if I say, for example, he was a Sahaba of the Prophet, it doesn't mean anything. Sahaba in Arabic, Sahaba in Arabic means a person who is in close proximity to you, the one who's living by you, the one who met you, the one who sat next to you. For example, you find Joseph, a great prophet in the Quran, is imprisoned. He is now with two prisoners with him. Both these prisoners were disbelievers. They did not worship God. Both of them. Yet you find Joseph addresses them as Ya Sahib as-Sijn. Oh my companions in prison. He doesn't say, he calls them Sahib as-Sijn. Sahaba here in the Quran means my companions. You find in the Quran, God mentions people who will enter hell. Ulaika ashabun nar. They are the companions of hell. Okay, again Sahaba, the word is used. Ulaika ashabul Jannah. They are companions of paradise. You notice the Quran is ambivalent. Okay, it doesn't take a position as far as what Sahaba means. So we have to be careful that just because history is told us Sahaba, it doesn't make all the Sahaba right. We know that there were good Sahaba and then there were bad Sahaba. I'm not passing a judgment as to who's a good Sahaba and who's a bad Sahaba. That's a discussion of a different kind. But my point I want to make clear is sometimes we take blanket statements and think once it comes under there, it's carved in stone and it has to be. And I'm saying no. It cannot be. The principles of the Quran clearly state, just because somebody is a companion, it doesn't mean it makes them special. Okay, unless God mentioned the specialty, then there is specialty. Ammar ibn Yasir was special. The Prophet said, Ammar ibn Yasir is so chosen by God that he will enter paradise with his parents. You find Abu Dhar, who was a companion of the Prophet. The Prophet said, there's no man more truthful under the sky than Abu Dhar. Okay, if the Prophet said that, yeah. Now people might say, well, what about Abu Bakr? The Prophet has stated. That's a discussion in itself. But as a Muslim community, if a particular school of thought believes in the caliphate of such people, we have to be prudent on either side, not to step on other people's emotions and to say, oh, I don't like that guy, and we start making fun of such people. This is not within Islam. If the very man whose khilafah was taken did not do such things, and even when he mentioned it at an academic level, that this is the command of God. If the caliphate is so important, well, what was the rule of the caliphate? How did you guys become the caliphs? Imam Ali asks Abu Bakr, how did you become a caliph? He says, I'm the closest blood relative. In the Saqifa Sahaba of Banu Sayda, he said, I'm the closest blood relative of the Prophet. And I am of the Quraysh. Imam says, I'm closer. And I'm not only Quraysh, I'm Banu Hashim within Quraysh. And the Prophet chose me. So these are the academic discussions. But for me to pass judgment and hatred and condemnation, for example, say, oh, he's going to go to hell. So, those caliphs are going to go to hell. I said, who told you this? There is a beautiful story of the Holy Prophet burying a human being, one of the followers, one of his own Sahaba. Here's a Sahaba once again. After he's buried, his mother or his wife started making comments, oh, I can see him in paradise. So the Prophet says, how do you know that? He says, well, Prophet, you're a prophet of God. You buried him. You prayed for him. You stood in front of his grave. He has to go to paradise. The Prophet says, no, you can't say that. Did God tell you that? Who told you this? Are you the master of the day of judgment? Or is God the master of the day of judgment? Who allowed you to pass such a judgment? That's a beautiful story, because now I can see a Christian, I can see a Sunni, I can see a Shia, I can see an atheist. Can I say this person's going to go to hell? God says, who are you to pass a judgment? You don't know where you are going. How did you know where this guy is going? Who told you this? Did someone tell you this? Did it come from God? Did it say in the Quran that you're going to go to hell or heaven? Okay, Abu Lahab is going to go to hell because the Quran says it. His wife is going to go to hell because the Quran said it. You want to say it? Say it. But if God didn't say it, who are you? So people who make judgments against the caliphs and pass, categorical judgments that such a person is going to burn, that's your comment. And such venomous comments should remain within your own tongue. And in my best of advice is, get rid of it. Because that's not what God has created us for. Allah did not create us to go around condemning and creating venomous attacks against people because of that. Those who follow the caliphs, in my opinion, have a good intention of following. In their minds, they really think that these people are truly designated in their ways. It's an academic discussion to understand who should be an authority and who should not be. But it's not upon me to pass a judgment just because you consider that to be a good leader as far as you're concerned. I respect that. And we should respect that. It's not within our jurisdiction to pass such judgments. Now, you want to have an academic discussion? We can have it and say, is it possible that the caliphs can be chosen by people? Is it possible that within a small group of people they can choose? Is it possible that a person who has not been appointed by God can take such a position? This we can talk about. Even from the very mouth of these leaders themselves, they say, we can't rule. Even Umar ibn Khattab said, "Lawla Ali la halaka Umar." Had it not been for Ali, Umar would have been destroyed. This is Umar's own statement, which is authentic in all the writings. So Umar himself admitted that if not for Ali ibn Abi Talib, it is very common. Umar used to always consult Imam Ali alayhi salam on various complicated issues. Various complicated issues. Let's talk at that level. And not pass judgment and hatred for each other. What we need to do, even Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who is one of the leaders of the four schools of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, says that your love for Ahl al-Bayt is essential. It's fundamental. And if you do not promote that love, you are not a Muslim. Now, where did he get that from? It's in the Quran. It's in the Hadith. Okay, then we are all the same. In principle, we are the same. That Sunni and Shia both are being promoted by God to go towards the commands of God and His Prophet. And what did the Prophet say? He says, you must get close to my near ones, period. As far as the wife of the Prophet, historically the Prophet had many wives. He had 9 to 11 wives, right? More than that. How come the other wives are not being mentioned? Why is only Aisha being mentioned all the time? With due respect to her, why is she the only one mentioned? Did the other wives, were they not good? And people say, look, they were Ummul Mu'mineen. I said, they were all Ummul Mu'mineen. They were all mothers of the believers. By the way, why they call Ummul Mu'mineen? People think, oh, she's the mother, meaning she's got great authority. No. In Surah Al-Ahzab, God says, وَأَزْوَاجُ أُمَّهَاتُهُمْ, the wives are like their mothers, implying you cannot marry them. Once they're married to the Prophet, forbidden for any human being to marry them after that. That's why they become like your mothers. The next verse in the Quran, in the same Surah Al-Ahzab, the 33rd chapter, God says the right of the child from the womb supersedes all. And if we were to consider the wives of the Prophet to be our mothers, then the Prophet should be our father. It's logical, it's rational. Yet the Quran says, مَا كَانَ مُحَمَّدٍ أَبَا أَحَدٍ مِّن رِجَالِكُمْ. The Prophet is not your father. وَلَكِنْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Rather, he is the messenger of God. So that means that if the wives were to be our mothers, then the messenger should be our fathers. God teaches us in a logical fashion that don't think that because we call the wives of the Prophet mothers of the believers, it means they are your mothers. It just means you cannot marry them. Now, do they inherit immunity? Do they have instantaneous immunity because they married the Prophet? Well, let's go to the Quran. The Quran in Surah Al-Tahrim, the prohibition, you find God clearly shows two great prophets, both their wives entered hell. will enter hell on judgment day. Now, am I making a judgment of this wife? No, not at all. But let us understand the principles that there are good wives, bad wives, medium wives. We all have them. And that's the principle within Islam. No one's passing a judgment as to which wife is going to go to heaven, which wife is going to go to hell. The point is, let us not try to take immunity by saying, because she's the wife of the Prophet, or any of them are wives of the Prophet, including Khadija, that suddenly now they get natural immunity. The Prophet said very clearly, Khadija and I will be in paradise together. The Messenger of God stated this unanimously. Every school of thought agrees that. Now, were the other wives bad or good? I'm not here to pass judgment. What we're here to understand is, this is the principle from the Quran, that even though you're a wife of the Prophet, that doesn't give you natural immunity. For you find ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط كانت تحت عبدين من عبادنا صالحين فخانتاهما. An example of two servants of God who had two wives. وَقِيلَ ادْخُلَ النَّارَ مَعَ الدَّاخِلِينَ. And on judgment day, because they disobeyed the prophets, because they were so difficult, God says, and they will be told to enter hell. What happens to the rest of the wives? Only Allah knows. Our obligation is to search the truth and find the best balance and to respect them. Imam Ali alayhi salam, after he defeated Aisha in the battle of the camel, he respected her. He did not belittle her. He respected her. He didn't even enter the tent where she was. He sent her own brother, Muhammad ibn Abu Bakar, okay, who went in. Why? Because it was the honor to be given to the wife of the Prophet. When she was taken back to Medina, Imam Ali brought her back with dignity, took her to her house with dignity, though he defeated her in the battle of the camel in Basra. Even then you find Imam Ali respected her. That's the principle we should follow. Anybody want to ask a question? There's a lot of written questions here.